Wow. Hello, everyone. How are you? A lot of people are here today, and I'm sorry that I'm running late. I, let me just double check. Uh, Wait, I am on now. So tonight is Nittle Nacht, and let me tell you a little bit about Nittle Nacht because normally what we do is we read the parsha. Normally that's hello, shalom. Okay, let me the pin. Okay. And that's the normal thing is to read the parsha today. That's what we would normally be doing. But tonight is a special night. It's Nittle Nacht, and but it's not while it's not why I was late. I was late because I got confused and I thought it was supposed to be at 6, and I forget that Parsha is supposed to be at 5. So my sincerest apologies to all of you who have come to join us. Um, and hopefully we'll be joined later tonight by Rabbi McLashley and maybe Rav Aaron. But as I said tonight, maybe not, because it's a special night called Nacht. And what is that? Nacht translates to Christmas night. It's the Jewish word for Christmas night. And it is a Jewish tradition observed primarily amongst Ashkenazi Jews, Jewish communities, but not necessarily Sephardic, not necessarily uh, um, Mizrahi or Haredi or Yemenite or da 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 da. Okay, um, uh, celebrated, but just mostly Ashkenazi. Okay, and how do they celebrate? Why would they celebrate or acknowledge a holiday of another group of people? Right? That doesn't. And what do they do on Nittle Nacht? What do Jews do on Nittle Nacht? Well, like I said, this tradition is to not read the Torah the night before Christmas because you're supposed to be as still as silent as a mouse. No, you. Uh, but the practice of Nittle Nacht does involve refraining from studying Torah, right? The central aspect of Jewish life. To me, that's a little bit of a surprise that that there would be a day during the year where maybe it's not appropriate to read Torah. So I know that this is so to me this is a very shocking tradition. Okay, it's not a tradition that in the past I have honored, but I will tonight because Aaron, Rav Aaron, asked me to honor it by not reading tonight's parsha, which is so. I'm gonna instead tell us a little bit more about this odd holiday where we don't read Torah. So, Nittle Nacht, nobody really knows how it, or when or where really it came about, but it was most particular and common in European, like I said, Ashkenazi Jews, and it arises, of course, sadly, out of some anti-Semitism where at this time, Christmas Eve, Jews did face some increased hostility and suspicion, and it was a time in Europe of heightened tension, lots of competing groups, and lots of pogroms, and lots of people not really being in the Christmas spirits. So by refraining from Torah study, some Jews sort of sought to distance themselves, maybe a little of safety, from the celebrations of their Christian neighbors. They didn't want to they wanted to avoid, any potential danger associated with tonight. Now, there's another idea about where this tradition came from. And it may be that the word Nittle, which might derive from German, the same word as Nacht. So it would be night. But combined with a reference to the holiday's association with the birth of Jesus. And it was said that this practice also stemmed, and this reminds me a lot of Halloween, actually, that it stems maybe from a belief that spiritual forces during the night were less favorable. And so learning Torah at night on Nittle Nacht, the night before Christmas, would be somehow less effective or even dangerous. I see we have Rabbi Danino joining us. And hi, Rabbi. I was just explaining. Hi. Hello, welcome. I was just explaining to everyone about Nittle Nacht, which Rav Aaron has asked me to honor. So tonight, rather than discussing Torah study and tonight's parsha, I'm teaching everybody about the history of this strange strange time, I would say, where we're not really supposed to read the Torah, which to me is very odd.
Well, we just finished the shiur here at my shul.
Oh, you did?
It was very nice. And the Sephardic tradition is that we don't pay attention to the goyim and we learn Torah with not referring to them, even though it is a Hasidic tradition, not to some Hasidim, not to learn during Torah and Drigis night, as it not to be Eloi Neshama to that man,
Yes, I tend to think myself it's a very strange idea that you would let an event that is outside of your own tradition influence your own tradition, right? But I understand, of course, where it may originate from, with people not wanting to read Torah in front of their Christian neighbors or whatever and start trouble, have trouble. But I was telling everyone this is primarily a European Ashkenazi tradition and not a Sephardic tradition or Mizrahi. Would that be correct? You agree?
That's correct. It's not a Sephardic tradition. We learn Torah. I'm a Sephardic and we learn Torah regularly.
Yeah.
I think there might be the origin of people who were, the group of Jews for Jesus.
Yes, Messianic Jews, so
yes. They behave like Jews, however, they believe in Jesus. And that's why during this night they learn in his honor. So in order to push away anyone from this group, from our society, they decided this night we are not learning. Could be, but let's guess. It's just a wild guess.
Yeah, I couldn't find any definitive explanation as to where it came from. Yes, Messianic Jews are a modern phenomenon, and this phenomenon, like I said, did start in the 19th century. The earliest findings, this discussion that I could find about it was actually from the Baal Shem Tov. and I found other Hasidic masters, Nachman of Breslov also mentioned this. So this custom gained some sort of traction, I think, during the 19th century. Rabbis really, even I believe Rabbi Zalman of Liadi, the first Rebbe of Chabad, noted this practice in his writings as well. So that's all I know about Nittle Nacht. I was surprised to find out that it was that it had been written about by the Baal Shem Tov. That's pretty early, right? He's 18th century. Am I correct? He was in the 1700s, I believe. Yeah. So that's 18th century. And if you don't know, Baal Shem Tov, if you're here with us, the Baal Shem Tov was a wonderful character who started Hasidic Judaism, but he could do all sorts of amazing and wonderful things. He fought werewolves, and he turned invisible, and he saved entire villages from death and destruction, and sort of infused a lot of mysticism back into Judaism. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I don't know much about it. That's right.
All right. Well, like I said, Rav Aaron asked me tonight to honor Nittle Nacht by not reading Torah. But if you want to read Torah, it's parsha Miketz, which is Genesis 41, and I think we have it on YouTube, where we did it maybe last year as well. But I'll go ahead and I will take questions about any other Torah study, but we'll not read from Torah tonight. Any other questions maybe from last week? We had a lot of people who was very interested in the gender idea of a soul having a gender. And that conversation, I can tell you, continued between me and Aaron, Rav Aaron, after our parsha, because he was still I don't want to say puzzled, but he was still thinking about it. And I told him, well, if you can imagine that someone has a Jewish soul, a soul that has an aspect to it, a quality, we would call it a Jewish soul. That would be the quality that we would call it. Then souls clearly do have qualities, and you can have qualities, maybe genders. That's a possibility. So I'm less disturbed by the idea of souls having qualities. Anything else? Questions, comments? We have a lot of people here today, but nobody asking questions. Okay. Well, then I think there's one question. Midnight Mass on Christmas Eve was really important to the Roman Catholics back then, and towns in Europe would have candlelight processions. Yes, that's true. From their place to the local church, and this is maybe why it's called Mitternacht. Okay, it could be Mitternacht for midnight of the midnight walk and walking around at night. I see. That's interesting. I see. And where I don't understand the question about where the chest part comes in, but yeah, but
the story is that the Rebbe was once a year playing chess with his father-in-law, which means also the previous Rebbe. And
Ah,
that will be the only night during the year that they play chess. I
ah,
think that's because all the other nights of the year they were learning Torah, of course. So that's one night a year they had to spend a couple of hours without learning Torah. They play chess to make their to practice their brain, not letting it rotten.
yeah, that is good. Yeah. Well, yeah, you should always keep exercising it for sure. Um, Someone asked if we're going to talk about Toldot Yeshua. That's not general. That's not really in the context of parsha. We don't usually talk about that book in the context of parsha. I did write an article about that. That's right, and it is a very fascinating book. I think I even might have made the book available in our ebook section. Um, and that is the life and times of Jesus. And that book, which is very old, was started maybe about 150. It was written about 150 to 200 years after Jesus walked around the earth, was alive. And so it's pretty close in almost contemporary times. And it was a biography that was written about him, which kind of was supposed to show what the Jewish people at the time that Jesus was around thought of him. Like, what did they saw this all this stuff happening around them, and what did they think of it? And it is a fascinating question, but it's not a question that's really for parsha. I would say it's a fascinating question, but not really one that we cover in parsha tonight because we're a little bit off. I'll spend some time talking about that book just a little bit more. But it's kind of a funny book. It portrays Jesus as being a pretty funny character who actually makes some jokes and is kind of sneaky and hangs around with prostitutes, which I believe is part of his story actually. And the story says that, well, they're trying to answer how did he do these miraculous things, and in the book they say that he snuck into the temple and he was able to. There are guards, out there are statues outside the temple that are supposed to howl that when you go into the temple so that you forget everything you possibly know. So he went into the temple, and it was one of two things. The way it's written is that he put the ineffable name of Hashem underneath his skin of his thigh. So nobody knows if that really meant that he tattooed the name or if he actually took a piece of paper or leather and maybe opened up his skin and then put it in his skin. And then he basically wrote himself a note. And then when he went out and the guardian statues made their howl, he would forget the thing, but now he has a note where he wrote it down, and that's where he got the powers from. But that's an interesting story, and I encourage you to. I did write something on that, and I encourage you to go check it out. And tonight might be a good night to do that because it's Christmas Eve. And if you want to learn about what the Jews maybe thought about Jesus at that time, that'd be an appropriate thing to read tonight. So, any other questions? Okay. Well, it is a very special night for many, many people. It's Erev Hanukkah. It's Erev Christmas. Kwanzaa is coming soon, and that's a very recent holiday. but very important to many, many people. So I acknowledge that as well. And I want everyone here, I thank them, everyone, and we'll see you at the last day of the new year. We'll have another parsha. So
If you want, I can say something about Hanukkah, which is not a Torah learning, but
I love it.
rather my view of the history
Yes, please.
That get us stuck with the Greek in this holiday of Hanukkah, which is the troubles that we had. Well, the story of the Greek starts with Alexander. Alexander the Great, Alexander Mukdon, was actually a great warrior. He was also a great philosopher because they say that he was a student of Aristotle, or maybe his father was a student of Aristotle. He was just a disciple. And he was accepted by the rabbis with both hands. And not only with both hands, they accepted him as a judge between them and the other nation. The Talmud is full of good things telling about him as being a righteous person, a good person, a nice person, a great warrior, and even having arguments with the rabbis that these arguments were put in the Talmud. Mm-hmm. So if so good, how come it came so bad? The story of Alexander ends very fast at age 35 in Babylon. He passes away from some reason, some disease or some problem, and he leaves the entire Greek empire to a small slaves, actually, his people that were not as smart as he was, were not as warrior as he was, because they didn't continue to enlarge the empire. And actually, they divided it to different groups, and each person of them got a piece. And one or few of them get Syria, and one of them gets Eretz Israel. And they governed the area. Now, when the Greek comes after Alexander, they are trying to impose their great philosophy. And the great philosophy of the Greek includes many things that which are very, very different to Judaism, like that the gymnastics that had to do this exercise without clothing, etc. And however, the problem was solved with the Greek pantheon, which is full of gods. I guess for Alexander, maybe it was not that important because he was a philosopher, he knew the difference. But the people come after him knew that the gods are very important. Everywhere they went, they said, okay, we have our gods, so put Zeus here and put whatever. Now, all the nations, if you have 30 gods and you give another 2, 3, 5, or 20, it doesn't make any difference. With the Jews, they have troubles. So that's when it started, not at the time of Alexander, but only a generation later, the problems between the Greeks and the Jews. And the Greeks governor actually decided at that time that they will not let Jews keep Shabbos because that's maybe the most important halacha, most important law of Judaism. And not let them keep a Brit Milah, the circumcision, and not let them keep Rosh Chodesh, which means know when is the new moon. Because if you don't know when the new moon, you don't know when is Pesach, and you don't know when is Rosh Hashanah, you don't know when is Yom Kippur. So that's 3 things that in the first generation, and then start to be a group of Jews that were mityavnim. Mityavnim means they are adopted the Greek, not really philosophy, but way of life.
Hellenistic Jews. Is that Hellenistic Jews?
That's right.
Yeah, Hellenistic
and when they came to the gymnastic with their goyim friends, they were ashamed of the fact that they don't have the circumcision, or they have circumcision and the other are not circumcised. So that's why they forbidden on Milah, on Brit Milah. And afterwards, and another generation goes, and they decided that it's not enough because the Jews are continuing to do, and decided to start with to start at very low age, teaching them the Greek. And one of the edicts that the way it mentioned somewhere in the Midrash that was to write on the horn, we have no part in the God of the Jews. En lanu chelek be'Elokei Israel. And that's because the horn has one side which is very narrow, and the other side is wide. So you fill it up with milk, and the baby sucks on the narrow side. And on the horn, he from the day he starts to suck on the milk, he says that I have no connection to Judaism, and that was not enough. However, when your philosophy is just philosophy and not Torah, generation afterwards, and that's what the history tells us, the governors decided to take the right of the governor for the first night with every lady that getting married. And that's, for me, it's nearly as bad as Hamas, except that it doesn't include bloody killing, but it's worse. So it's making whatever the Hamas did on October 7th in a legal way, and actually desecrating all the Jewish women. And it went so on for, I don't know how many years, but quite a long time, until one of the ladies of the Hasmonaim, the sister of Judah the Maccabee and his brothers, on the night before her marriage, the night before she goes to the king, to the governor, they made a party, and she arrived there with her underwear. And they all are shocked because they're all rabbis. And he says, well, the governor is going to send me tomorrow with even less than this. So what are you do nothing about it. And that's what changed the whole story. And then they decided to come up and raise and decline and decree war and call for a war. And the story is, of course, that Matityahu, their father, went up. It says, Mila Hashem and I, who is for Judaism, for Hashem, will come and follow me. And they fought it, and they win, of course. That's more or less the way I understand the historiography of that time, which means when you start with philosophy, and that's why it is the holiday of lights. When you start with the philosophy, like Aristotle, which you think it's a great light to the world, actually it's such a great light that even Rambam, nearly 1,000 years afterwards, think that he was a great philosopher. Yeah. However, if you don't have a Torah and the difference between just the wisdom of philosophy and the Torah is that the Torah change your quality, change your midot, make you to be more modest, make you to be more calm, make you to be a better person. If it's not a Torah, it's rather a wisdom, it can take you as very, very low levels, as low as they arrived, which we don't see much difference between what they did with the first night thing, and what the Nazis did, and what the Hamas did, and what Haman did. All of them are different philosophies, a different wisdom, but the same atrocities. And that's why we celebrate the holiday of lights. It's the lights of the Torah.
So I have here's a question.
I don't think I learned Divrei Torah, but I told a historiography of the days of Hanukkah, and I think it's the right way to look at it.
I agree. I have a question here. Someone asked a question which I never thought about, but is I think a very good question. Is why is the book of Maccabees not part of the Tanakh?
First of all, the Tanakh was sealed about 200 years before that.
That's what I was going to
say. At the beginning of the Second Temple, there were 3 prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And the 3 of them are the last one to get into the Tanakh. Afterwards starts the rabbis. It's a completely different approach. The rabbis, this approach that comes from Babylon, from the exile of Babylon, and the entire approach. So the holy books are sealed, and nothing gets into them any further. However, since the Hashmonaim were kings and they were pressing the rabbis very much in order to do something in their memory, the rabbis were not ready to change the corpse of the Bible. They gave them the holiday of Hanukkah for 8 days, and we say Hallel for 8 days. That's this and Sukkot are the only holidays when we say Hallel for 8 days, and we have a special prayer, Al Nisim, for the time of the Hashmonaim, because they were kings and they ruled the country. And as you probably know from my previous says, kings tend to be very likely to feel themselves important enough to be more important even than religion. So they wanted their share, and they got it inside the prayers, Al Nisim and the Hallel, etc. But they didn't let them get into the Bible, and that's why also why all the objection to all the books of the Apocrypha, all the books of the what they call New Testament, are not getting to our Bible, even just as a testimony of bad things. We don't accept them at all because the Bible is closed, it's locked. There is no prophecy after these 3 last prophets.
Yeah.
And everybody who says that he is a prophet, we send him to the place where they send the Meshiganach, because that's the only one who got prophecy. That's we handle. If somebody will can say, hey, I had a dream, I'm Napoleon, I'm Bonaparte, you send him to the Meshiganah place. You don't send him to you don't refer to him any seriously. So that's the way Judaism refer to Muhammad and to Jesus and to all the others.
I see. I do know the one thing that I know about Alexander, which is that Alexander, the name, made its way into Judaism, becoming a Jewish name because the Jewish people had such great respect for Alexander the Great.
That's with permission of the rabbi, with approval of all the rabbis, that his name will get to be a Jewish name, and they will call their children with his name.
Yeah.
And until today, it goes until today. Alexander is a Jewish name.
Yeah, right. So that's one of the few sort of we see that are crossover from outside the religion into the religion, as opposed to in the religion to outside. Like everybody outside the religion named Michael and David and Gabe, right? They all came from us. They started from Jewish tradition, those names, and they made their way into other traditions, Christian tradition, whatever. But this is the only one that I know of that went from outside to in. Yeah.
There was a question here, why, what good did Alexander? Well, the good that he did, first of all, he freed the Jews from the Persians. The Persians had their own troubles against the Jews, and he freed them. And also, there was a war between the Jews and the Kutim, some other sects that were around, and he was very fond of Shimon HaTzadik, which was the high priest, and he let him handle everything, and he just pushed away all the others that made troubles to the Jews. So he was very friendly with the Jews. He likes very much the wisdom of the Jews, and there are many stories in Talmud when he came to learn Torah from the Jews, to learn wisdom, I would say, not Torah, wisdom, whatever, wisdom from the Jews, and not only from the Jews, or from other countries. There is a story that he goes to learn from the king of the Kassites, etc. So they refer to him as a person who is very much fond of knowledge and wisdom, and as such, and also that is favorable for the Jews, that and let them having their own governing place in Israel to some extent, not to the extent that even at his time there was no There is no free country there for the Jews. It was a Greek colony. However, still they have their freedom to have the temple, to have worship in the temple, to have over everything they want to handle the way they think the halacha wants to do it, and that was a great favor for them.
Yeah,
That was
it
the
was like
appreciation they had for them.
self-governance. It was a self-governance. They were still part of the empire, the Alexander's empire, but had more freedom of self-governance. Is my recollection.
I don't think that the governors that asked for the first night rite, or the governors that didn't allow for Shabbos and Bris Milah, etc., they were it was a complete independence. They were far from complete independence. However, they were handling the temple, and they handling their own, and they many things that they could handle by themselves. However, the pantheon, which means the gods, they have only one god here. They didn't accept their gods, and they have their way of fighting. As I said, it's not the time of Alexander. The philosophical fight start only a generation later.
Later, yeah. So Lolan asks about the miracle of the Hanukkah lighting, which obviously is an appropriate question. And well, I will quickly summarize that, which is that you had the Maccabees, and there was another group, and a big battle essentially occurred, and maybe Rabbi Danino can fill in more details. But what was left after the battle was not enough. While they were victorious, the Maccabees were victorious, there wasn't enough oil to light the Ner Tamid. That is the eternal light. We are supposed to have a light in the temple that is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, forever. Okay, and there wasn't enough oil to light the Ner Tamid. There was only enough oil for 1 day, and thankfully a miracle occurred, and it lasted for 8 days, which was enough time to get us.
Just a little correcting one little word that you forgot. There was not enough clean oil, which means all the oil was unclean because desecrated by the Greeks.
Yes.
They touched the vessels, and they could not use a vessel that were touched by a goy. So it's unclean, considered to be tame, unclean. Yeah. So there only one little vessel that was enough for one night, exactly as you said. So that's also will explain why it is the holiday of religion. It's not that it was not enough oil to put light. There's not enough clean oil to put the light in the halachic way.
Yeah. It was just one flame. Yes, Lolan. It was just this one particular lamp, because this lamp is a holy lamp. It's for the temple. Everything that's for the temple has to be in a state of purity. What you can do at home, you can use whatever you want. It didn't have to be this special oil. So this is it. Now, Hanukkah is considered to be a pretty minor holiday in the Jewish tradition. It's surpassed in importance by Passover and Sukkot and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, the major festivals. So it's considered to be a minor festival, but in today's times, because everybody is celebrating, and it's just a lovely time for December, Hallmark and companies have decided to make Hanukkah more accessible and more Christmas-like. That way, everybody's buying each other gifts and presents and using up those Hallmark cards, to give to each other. But really, not so much. It's not so one of the major important. It doesn't have the status.
Yeah, I would say that today the donuts are more important than the of the holiday. Donuts are in Hebrew Are that's what make the children love this holiday. And that's right. It's mainly the things that comes around it, and that are the most tasteful things that make things lovable by the people.
Yeah, it's beloved by the people. That's exactly right. It's a popular, literally the word popular, populous and popular holiday. And with the dreidel and most of the time you traditionally aren't supposed to give gifts, but except for you're supposed to give gifts of money.
That's only the Ashkenazi tradition. I'm from a Sephardic family. We just were eating donuts and that's it, and lighting the candles.
No gifts.
No
Yeah.
gifts.
No
No gifts.
gifts. Yeah. Yeah. And people here may not know that the dreidel in outside of Israel is marked a little bit differently than if you bought a dreidel in Israel. In Israel, they have each dreidel you might have seen has 4 sides, and outside of Israel, you've got Hey, a Shin, a Gimel, and a Nun. And inside Israel, one of the letters is substituted with Pei. Yes? And would you care to tell everyone why?
Well, they say that the Nun Gimel Hey and Shin for Nes Gadol Haya Sham, a great miracle happened there.
I agree.
And when they get to Israel, the there tends to here. Here Nes Gadol Haya Po. That's the Pei instead of the Shin. That's right. But the story of the dreidel is that when the Greek were not allowing people to learn Torah, they will learn Torah by heart. And when the Greek will come and by surprise to see what they are doing, there was a dreidel rotating around, and when it fell, somebody has to pay. So it was like gambling. They say we are playing, we are gambling. And that's while learning Torah, they use the dreidel to cheat on them and tell them we are doing gambling. Gambling is a Greek tradition, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it.
Sure. So I'm going to tell everybody here something that I know. Oh, I don't know, but I'm going to make a bet that nobody here knows this story because this story has been held close to the hearts of many people. There is a game called Put and Take. Put and Take is a bar game. It is a bar game, and I have a set of Put and Take tops. It's a spinning top game, and it looks exactly like a dreidel. And just like the dreidel rules, you are supposed to put money in a pot, and if you spin the dreidel, the top, and if it comes up put, then you have to put in. If it comes up take, you get to take out. Okay, so it's pretty much the same game, but what I'm going to tell you is that in, I believe, the 19th century, some very clever people realized that you could shave a little bit off of the dreidel so that when it spins, it will land on either a put or a take, depending on whether or not you spin it with your left hand or you spin it with your right hand. And so there are hustlers. Hustlers, of course, are people who are scam artists. They don't have good morals. They're trying to take money from people when they don't deserve it. One would think that the hustle for this game would be to play with a single person and then take all their money. But that's not how the scam of put and take worked. The scam of put and take worked in a much more clever way. What would happen would be the scam artist would go to a bar or some other place like that and strike up a conversation with the bartender or someone, and he would bust out a put and take game. And so you would spend your time, if you were the hustler with the bartender, going back and forth with the money. And of course, at the end of the evening, you, the hustler, would win all the money. But now, rather than leaving the bar, the hustler would turn to the bartender and say, listen, I'm sorry. I want you to know that I scammed you the whole time. And the bartender would be upset, and the hustler would show him how the trick worked. If I do it with the right hand, it's going to land on put. If I do it with the left hand, it's going to land on take. I'll tell you what, I will sell you these two dreidels, spinning tops. They look exactly the same, and I'll sell them to you for $100. So the bartenders, knowing that now he has the secret and he can control the winning, would oftentimes agree. They would make that purchase, not knowing that in the person who sold the tops had a friend, and this friend had the same set of tops that would go in the opposite direction. So this other friend, who was unknown to the bartender, would come in once a week whenever they needed money and do the same trick, but backwards. And since it's a gambling trick that uses some level of statistics, the bartender would just think, gosh, this top is not working for me tonight. It worked for me last night. It worked for me on Tuesday. It worked for me on Thursday. I don't know why it's not working for me tonight, but it didn't work for me tonight. And so the scammer is, of course, much less likely to be caught. And now they essentially have an ATM to go to every week if they wanted to. And that is how the classic put and take scam was run. And not very many people know that. It just happens to be that I also am very interested in magic tricks and con artists and hustles and things like that. So that's the story of put and take, which is just exactly like a dreidel. Exactly like a dreidel.
Very nice.
Please don't do that. It's not moral. It's not ethical. It is against Judaism to steal from your partner. And I will say that in the collection of all of the segulot, or spells, or rituals that you want to call, I compiled 800 of them going back to ancient times, and I only could find one Jewish spell for cheating. One, and it was for cheating at chariot racing. And that was it. So chariot racing isn't a thing anymore. But there was a little spell that they would bury in the dirt below the horse, in the gates, and so that one would win. So that's the only one. That was I was very proud. I was very proud to see that there was more spells for love than there was for hatred. Right? There was more spells for love and blessings than there were for cursing. This is very good because cursing and spells and things like this, they don't arise generally from the rabbis, the top down, right? The authorities, the religious authorities. They are generally things that come from the people, and the bottom up, I would say. No rabbi is going to teach you how to cheat at gambling. That would be wrong, or how to, that would be not right. So these things come up from the people, and it was nice to see that we have a long history of very good people who have produced many, many different ways of blessing people and not very many ways of cursing people. Oh, and by the way, if you look in the cursing structure, the structure of any type of spell or segulot or whatever that is to cause hatred or to cause enmity or to cause disruption or malevolence, they usually follow an external Greco-Roman format, meaning the Jews didn't come up with it themselves, they took it from elsewhere. That's, to me, also a very fascinating fact, and it speaks, I think, highly of the Jewish people. So I'll leave everyone with that tonight and say Happy Hanukkah, have fried food, good donuts, latkes. Amen.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.